Welcome to the Indie Author Method, where we share insights from authors on their writing journey. On the weekends, when you have more time and space in your day, we sit down with another author to discuss their process and what they can share with you. This episode is brought to you by Monk Manual. Monk Manual at its core is a 90-day productivity system, but it's much more than that. Monk Manual as a company is on a mission to fix modern productivity and help people live fuller lives. Inspired by the wisdom of monks and rooted in psychology, they designed practical tools for peaceful being and purposeful doing. They were so gracious to partner with the Indie Author Method, and you can check out their products, including the 90-day planner that I personally use, at their website, monkmanual.com. Be sure to use promo code Andrew J. Brandt at checkout for 15% off your order. That's all one word, my name, Andrew J. Brandt at monkmanual.com. Now, on to the interview. Today, I'm so excited to talk with Juliana Brandt, no relation that we know of, whose latest release, Monsters in the Mist, released last year with a new book, Exit Nowhere, coming out next summer. Juliana, it's nice to talk to a long-lost cousin.
Yeah, who knows? Wouldn't that be interesting?
That would be funny. No, thank you so much for coming on the show and talking with us.
Thank you for having me here. Any excuse to talk about writing is like perfect.
You know, and you are, I've had crime fiction writers, I've had fantasy writers, and so I really wanted to talk with somebody who is also in the young adult or middle grade children's lit space that I am.
Yeah.
So really wanted to get your insights on things. So thank you so much for sitting down with us.
Thank you. I am so passionate about kids lit. I think it's such a special place for writers to be. So that's fun that that's the space you're into.
Let's talk about Monsters in the Mist. So what inspired you to write this book? How'd you come up with the idea for it?
Yeah, so Monsters in the Mist is based on Lake Superior. And when I first came up with the idea a few years ago, gosh, it was like 2019, October of 2019, and I went up to Lake Superior, just north of Duluth. There is a lighthouse. It's called Split Rock Lighthouse. It's at the top of a 100-foot cliff. And I went on a fall day that was just dreary and stormy, and the wind was whipping off the lake, and it was freezing. And I stood there into the wind and I thought, there's a book right here. I just need to figure out what it is. So so that's where the story first kind of like the inspiration. I held the setting in my head for a long time until the actual story kind of formed, where there's a boy who's stuck on the island and he has experienced some trauma in his life. And he's processing that trauma, but at the same time as that, he's experiencing these monsters that are on the island, and he has to figure out what all of the monsters are. So I have the spooky island, I have the boy with the monsters, and kind of trying to figure out some of his past and his experiences. And that is what ended up making Monsters in the Mist, a story about a boy who's stuck on an island with a curse and monsters and has to figure out how to escape.
I love that answer of you have this seed and you cultivate that seed of an idea. So many aspiring authors, I think one of the most common questions is, where do you get your ideas? And
everywhere.
It's everywhere. Yeah.
Everywhere. Yeah. I don't know if that's the way that you are too, but I'll have the word seed is perfect. There will be a tiny seed and it will be in your head, and then you'll have a different little seed idea. And then suddenly 5 years later, it's like, oh, they're the same thing. I can put them together and create a story around it. So
last year, October of last year, I put out a middle grade fiction book called Picture Unavailable. And the seed of that book, the original idea came from my spouse who was 7 months pregnant. This is the middle of COVID. So we're spending a bunch of time outside, hanging out together. I was watching this flickering light from this yard lamp in someone's front yard, just kind of flickering, dimming in and off. And then the idea of this monster, swallowing up the light,
Oh, that's cool.
So
that's
I love
really
it.
Cool.
Coming into, you write middle grade or children's lit. Who are some of your biggest influences? Yeah,
I always have to say Diana Wynne Jones. She's an older author, she's kind of a pillar of foundation of middle grade. She died a couple decades ago, so she's not modern, but she's always the person I have to say. She's who wrote Howl's Moving Castle, which I know a lot of people know from the movie. But when I read her stories, that's when I realized how powerful middle grade stories could be. Um, and kind of understanding that you can have these incredible fantasy stories that are really deep and confusing puzzles. She has this fantastic quote that's something about, I won't get the quote anywhere near that's near it being right, but it's something like, people think about children's books being dumbed down and they're not as
Mhm.
smart, but children are constantly figuring out puzzles. They had never have any idea what's going on around them. So kids are always asked to figure things out. And so in storytelling, we get to create complicated stories for kids. So I tend to really admire her for saying that and for being really blunt that the stories you write for kids should be complicated and deep and have all of these layers to them. And so some of her books and looking at her, she's for sure somebody I admire. Yeah.
I love that. I grew up on a steady diet of R.L. Stine
Oh, yeah.
this until the sixth grade. I had an English teacher who saw me with one of those Goosebumps books. She
Yeah.
goes, "Oh, if you like that, here, you'll love this," and handed me Pet Sematary.
Oh, man.
Yeah,
Isn't that like it just takes a teacher to like see what you're
yep.
doing and get you something else?
Scared the crap out of me. I didn't. I read nothing but like Hank the Cowdog for 6 weeks after.
To try to like come off the tension of it. Yeah.
You're talking about your influences. How has your writing style been impacted by the authors that you've either grown up with or that you read now?
Yeah. I think so. Interestingly, my first three books are very lyrical and very. They have kind of more of a fairy tale vibe to them. A lot of atmosphere, and I've kind of done a little bit of a pivot, a little bit of a shift in for Exit Nowhere that will come out next summer. And part of that is from reading what some other authors are doing in specifically in like the middle grade horror category or
Okay,
kind of like spooky books. I know Lindsay Curie, she's somebody that I read a bunch for middle grade spooky books.
sure.
And having how to combine like the storytelling that I really love to do, but having more of a commercial voice to it or a commercial hook and really having man, that like propulsion that can happen in books, because that's
Mhm.
not where I naturally write from. And it honestly was some of the most fun writing that I have ever done. Like it just was a blast writing it from the first word to the last word. So I figure I had a lot of fun myself writing this one. So I'm hoping that people have a lot of fun reading it too. Yeah. So I think reading other authors is a way to kind of push myself in my own storytelling when I wouldn't necessarily do that on my own.
Yeah, 100%. I
Yeah.
think we're supposed to. Stephen Pressfield wrote "Steal Like an Artist." He says
Yeah.
you're supposed to glean information from other people.
Yeah.
I think it was Epictetus maybe that says like, or maybe Marcus Aurelius talks about how why would you learn from experience when you could learn from the experience of others? Why would you waste
Somebody
time?
else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why would you waste time making your own bad decisions when you can learn from the bad decisions of others? And
God, I love that.
yeah,
Yeah. And that's exactly it. Reading other books, you're like, oh, I want to do that. Or nope, I don't want to do that.
right.
Yeah.
What's your writing process like, Juliana?
Yeah. It depends for each book. I think writing under contract is very different because then, I mean, then you're working off of the synopsis and for Exit Nowhere, I was working under a pretty tight deadline. So then, wake up and kind of get out a chapter a day, do my best for that. And then, that was a much more compressed timeline. But if I'm left to my own devices, like I am during the summertime when I'm off of teaching, then I kind of wander through stories a lot more. And I usually have like the big pillars of the exciting things in the story. Then I'm trying to figure out as I go. I do my best writing in the morning time, which is a bummer when it's the teaching year because then I typically only write on the weekends. So I can wake up and like have my really nice cup of coffee and sit and write for a couple hours before I go do something else. So I think it definitely, my actual writing habits varies a lot if it's during the school year or if it's during the summertime. So
Sure.
kind of have to vary depending
Yeah.
on when we're talking.
Robert Greene talks about how his daily habits are more important than his moments of extreme inspiration.
Yes. Oh my
And
gosh. Yeah.
so every time I get to talk to an author, and I'm really talking to our aspiring authors who subscribe to the newsletter and the podcast, is that they need to understand and see that other authors, they work off of habit and routine, not necessarily
Yeah.
inspiration.
Yeah, completely. And I think because my yearly schedule can vary so much, having that habit that I can fall back on when I get into the summer means that I don't lose time. Or what happens, like when I started Exit Nowhere, I knew that I would have Christmas break coming up or the winter break coming up. So I'd have 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I sat down and wrote about half of the manuscript in those 2 weeks. But the only way that I could do that is because I had, 10 years worth of cultivating the habit of when I sit down in the morning for my couple hours of writing, like I have to be really focused. Otherwise, the 2 weeks are going to end. I'll go back in January to school and then I will have no more energy to write. So
do you write for time or do you write for word count?
I write for word count, usually shooting for about a chapter, which kind of tends to be like 2,000 to 3,000 words.
Okay.
Depending on the chapter and depending on the book type. Can be shorter than that. So usually if I hit that chapter mark, then I feel like I have done what I needed to do during a day.
I like that.
Yeah.
One last question.
Yes.
Before I let you go, what is the message or takeaway that you'd like for our readers to get from Monsters in the Mist?
Yeah. Oh man, for Monsters in the Mist, knowing that the scary and difficult things that we kind of face in life are, I can relate to this to writing too, are like so important for us because it tells us who we are and it tells us how hard we can work on things, even for people who are writing books and making mistakes and hitting failure points and then working past them. Like that is so transformative to who we are and to our writing and to finishing books, and knowing that when we hit those moments, that like finding our way to the other side of it is integral to the entire journey. So don't be afraid to make mistakes and then find your way through them. It's very powerful.
I love it. Juliana, where can our viewers, readers find you?
Yeah, Instagram mostly. I would say Twitter, but that's kind of, doing the thing. So Instagram is like mainly the place that I am at. So come find me there. I would love to see everybody.
Yeah. And your books are available wide?
Yes. Books are available anywhere you search for my name for books, which is great.
Fantastic. And one more before I let you go. This is the last question. I always ask this one. And I'm sure this has already happened to you, but you're going to be at a book conference or a signing or a library or somewhere, and some kid is going to have a well-worn, well-loved copy of Monsters in the Mist, or they're going to have a brand new copy of Exit Nowhere, and they're going to say, you are my favorite author, and I want to write stories. What's the biggest piece of advice you would give me? So what is that one piece of advice you'd give to that aspiring author? Oh my gosh, just write. Like write and have so much fun writing and enjoy the process of it. And don't get hampered by like thinking super far in the future. Just actually genuinely love the moment that you're at and the actual process of writing. That is so important. Loving the craft itself. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Juliana, thank you so much for your time today. You. Really appreciate it. One more time, Juliana Brandt, Monsters in the Mist, available wherever books are sold. Yeah. Thank you for talking with us here at the Indie Author Method. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much, Andrew. And we'll see you next summer when Exit Nowhere comes out. Yes. I would love that. All right. Take care. Bye.